Alright, so this next video in the Photoshop 101 series is on the gradient and paint bucket tools on your toolbar here. Hotkey for those is going to be G, so pressing G will open those up, or you can click it over here on the side. The gradient tool is a little bit more in depth than the paint bucket tool. For obvious reasons, the paint bucket is going to drop a single color down. The gradient tool, you're going to have different gradients. There are a few different things you can do with it. So when you click the gradient tool, you're going to get this little crosshairs. You can click and drag this anywhere, and that's going to fill your gradient color. If you were to just click dead center, one click, no dragging, it will split your gradient in half. So it's going to give you a half and half because nothing was dragged. It's not telling the gradient to pull the black from one side to the other side to blend with the white. If you go the full length of your thing, it's going to do very little black on one side, very little white on the other side, into a bunch of gray tones. This is just the default gradient color, by the way. You can obviously change this gradient color. I'll get to that here in a second, but short strokes, you know, the angle that you have, everything changes with how you drag your line. So it's a pretty straightforward, pretty simple tool there. This gradient that we're doing right now is just the linear gradient. You have different selections up here on the top. You've got radial gradient, angle gradients, reflected gradient, and then diamond gradient. So if we went to a radial gradient and we drew our line, it's going to make a circle gradient. If you just put it dead center in the middle, it's going to give you a little tiny dot. If you went corner to corner, it's going to give you more of a gradient from this side. So it really depends on what you're doing, where you're dragging, where you're starting from. That starting point is going to be the center. So if you try and start in the middle of it and you go out to the side, it's going to put your black dots somewhere in the middle of it. The next gradient, the angle gradient, not a gradient that I use ever really for any reason. It's kind of a weird one. Maybe to make some like brushed metal stroke design or something like that, but it's literally just an angle. It's a very odd gradient for everyday normal designs. You have your reflected gradient, which is going to do kind of a split. It'll do like a black white. So it's going to give you a little bit more of a color. So you got the white into the gray into the black, back into the reflection. So it's literally a reflection on that line that you've drawn. And then the diamond gradient, also not one that I use for any reason. It's literally just going to make like a diamond. It's kind of cool for like a 3D effect, I suppose. It kind of looks like you're falling in a little tunnel or a hole there. But design-wise, it's not something that really gets used a whole bunch. Possibly to make some like stars or something in a like galaxy background or something like that, but there are better, easier ways to do that. So if you click up here on the top bar, if you click the actual gradient color and not the drop down, you can click the drop down and it'll give you a little list, and you can pick from all the default gradients. The basic gradients are going to be what colors you have here on your foreground and background colors. So I've got black and white chosen, so that's obviously going to be what those are. So that's black and white, and that's black to transparent, and then that's like another black to white. These colors, gradients that are all in here are all defaults. Photoshop comes with quite a few gradients for you to pick from. So reds, pinks, oranges, grays, greens, you know, the whole 9 yards as far as a bunch of different preset gradients to pick from. If you click on this actual gradient color thing though, it's going to open up a gradient editor for you. Inside this gradient editor, this is all the same stuff we were just looking at, so all the presets that are there. But you can create your own gradients using this bar here. So in order to use this bar, simply you're going to click this little black color square down here at this bottom where the color stop is. If you double click that, it's going to open up a color picker. You can pick whatever color you want to start your gradient. So we can go, you know, to a green. you could click here and just have a 2-color gradient if you wanted, and change this color to, you know, whatever else you wanted. Say you wanted to go to kind of like a yellowish color, that would be fine. If you wanted to add more colors into this gradient, all you do is click anywhere below the line, and it's going to give you another option to pick a color. So you can drag those, move those around if you want. You can add, you know, 1,000 colors in there. This is a good way to create like a mermaid shimmer background or something like that, you know, purples and blues into pinks, and it's a good way to create like those unicorn mermaid colorful gradient backgrounds. Very simple. Just double click on the color stops and change your color. So we want to go from that green to like a lime green to say a random teal color into whatever. You know, there's endless possibilities. You know, this gradient's not going to look super great just because I'm clicking, you know, a bunch of random colors, but say we wanted to do something like that. We'd click OK, and it's going to load our gradient for us up here in the bar. So now whenever we drag it, we'll go back to linear, and we'll drag it, and it'll give us our gradient color. This is another way to make tie-dye backgrounds, which I'll get into a video on how to make those also. But it gives you kind of a lot of room to play with, a lot of room to be creative by just double clicking that up at the top and then selecting whatever colors you want. And if you wanted, you can also just select a preset, hit OK, and that's the preset background, you know, gradient color. The next tool is the paint bucket tool, which is obviously one of the most straightforward tools there is. You literally just select whatever color you want, clicking down here at your foreground color. Right now it's set to black. Say I want it to be red. We'll click OK, and we'll click it, and it's going to paint our entire background red. Super simple, super easy. The 3D material drop tool is not usable. Well, it is usable, but for us it's not, because we're not building in 3D. We're building in 2D. We're designing in 2D. So it's just got that little X there, that little circle that says you can't do anything, and it doesn't even give you any dialog boxes because we are not in a 3D design mode right now. Photoshop does have 3D design, you can see here at the top, but it's just not something that I've ever used or messed with really. I have no need to because I make 2D designs for print. So the next section we're going to go over the smudge tool, the sharpen and blur tools. Those tools are pretty good, pretty useful, so we'll get into that in the next video, and then we'll go from there.